The old monk did not reply. Instead, he carefully observed the two boys, and couldn't help but glance at Lin Jingyu again, muttering to himself, good talent, but why is his temper so aggressive? At this moment, Zhang Xiaofan stepped forward and said, Hey, who are you? How come I've never seen you before? Chao Miao village is close to the Qingyun Sect, where the Taoist doctrine is predominant, and Buddhist disciples are rare, which is why Zhang Xiaofan asked this. The old monk glanced at him, a slight smile touching the corner of his mouth, and countered, Little benefactor, your life was in danger just now. You only needed to admit defeat, yet why were you so stubborn? If this old monk had not intervened, I fear you would be dead now. Zhang Xiaofan was stunned. He secretly felt the old monk's words made sense, but he couldn't quite articulate why the incident had happened the way it did. Lin Jingyu glared at the old monk, pulling Zhang Xiaofan's arm, saying, Xiaofan, this old monk is strange. Let's not pay attention to him. With that, he pulled him toward the exit. The other children followed suit. Clearly, they were used to following Lin Jingyu's lead. Zhang Xiaofan walked out unconsciously, but after taking a few steps toward the temple gate, he couldn't resist looking back inside. It was already darkening, and he could only vaguely see the old monk still standing there, his face no longer visible in detail. Deep into the night, a clap of thunder sounded. The wind scattered the clouds, and black clouds rolled densely across the sky. A storm was approaching, about to sweep over everything. The old monk remained in the grass temple, meditating on the ground. He looked up, the Qingyun Mountains in the distance now just a blurry outline. What a great storm! A streak of lightning cut across the void, momentarily illuminating the tiny, isolated grass temple battered by the wind. The old monk had stepped out to the doorway, his expression solemn, looking up at the sky, his eyebrows deeply furrowed. In the village to the west, a mass of black energy, thick as ink, had suddenly churned up and was continuously rolling. The old monk stood at the temple door, staring intently at the black mass. Suddenly, the black mass contracted, spiraled up, and swiftly darted out of the village, heading straight for the small grass temple. Its speed was extremely fast, arriving in the blink of an eye. The old monk's sharp eyes caught sight of a small child trapped within. It was Lin Jingyu, whom he had met earlier in the day. His face sank. Without hesitation or visible movement, his withered body flashed and shot straight into the black mass. From within the murky darkness, a soft gasp of surprise echoed, "Eh?" After a few miserable groans, the black mass abruptly halted, circling directly above the grass temple without moving further. The old monk, clutching Lin Jingyu by the side, slowly descended, though a piece of his robes had been torn from his back. In the flash of a weak light, Lin Jingyu was seen with his eyes tightly shut, breathing steadily. It was unclear whether he was sleeping or unconscious. The old monk did not set him down. He raised his head to look at the black mass in the air and said, "Your Excellency's Taoist art is profound, yet why attack an innocent child? I fear it is beneath your dignity." A hoarse voice came from within the black mass, "Who are you, to dare interfere with my business?" The old monk did not answer, but instead said, "This is the foot of Qingyun Mountain. If the Qingyun Sect discovers your Excellency causing chaos here, I fear things will not go easily for you later." The other scoffed, his tone contemptuous, "What is the Qingyun Sect? They only rely on their numbers. Old bald donkey, stop wasting words. Hand the child over to me immediately if you know what's good for you." The old monk pressed his palms together and replied, "Amitabha Buddha. A monastic must maintain compassion. This old monk absolutely cannot stand by and watch this child be harmed by your wicked hands." The figure was furious. "Well said, you old bald rogue. You seek death." Along with the shout, a deep red, strange light flashed out from the circling black mass, engulfing the small grass temple. A chilling wind howled, filled with ghostly energy. The blood banner of poison, Doc Huyet Fiend. The old monk's face suddenly filled with anger. "Wicked creation. How dare you cultivate such a heartless evil artifact that brings disaster upon the world? Today, I shall not spare you." The hoarse voice gave a cold laugh, offering no reply, only a mournful howl. The deep red light intensified, and a 20-foot-long blood-colored banner slowly unfurled from the center of the sky. At that moment, the wail of ghosts sounded mournfully, as if countless tormented souls were weeping in the night. Mixed within was the chilling sound of rattling bones, terrifying to hear. "You old bald rogue, die!" the person in the black mass shouted. Suddenly, a vicious, demonic face with 3 horns, 4 eyes, sharp teeth, and long fangs emerged from the blood-colored banner. With a clatter of bones, the 4 eyes on the demon face abruptly opened. It roared, transforming into a physical entity that charged out from the banner, bringing a foul, bloody stench straight toward the old monk. The old monk's expression grew even angrier. He knew the blood banner of poison was extremely powerful and must have harmed many innocent lives during its cultivation. To achieve such power, it likely required the essence and blood of over 300 people. This evildoer was truly heartless. Seeing the demon about to descend upon him, the old monk still did not release the child, Lin Jingyu, whom he held at his side. He simply used his left hand, which held the jasper rosary, to draw a circle in front of him. His hand formed the Buddhist lion seal mudra, and a golden light silently emanated from his fingertips. In an instant, a golden dharma wheel, then Luan, was erected before him, its brilliant golden light clashing fiercely with the demon in mid-air. "Such a trivial trick, you dare to show off." Before he could finish the word off, the old monk's entire body suddenly shook. He felt a foreign object sink its teeth into his right wrist, where he held the child. A tingling sensation immediately ran up half his body, his vision darkened, and the golden dharma wheel instantly wavered, on the verge of collapsing. Precisely at that moment, the demon underwent a strange transformation. Between the 4 eyes on its forehead, with 2 clanks, a gigantic, blood-red eye opened. A foul wind rose, and the pressure intensified. Amidst a single ghostly wail, the blood-red light flashed, the demon shattered the golden dharma wheel, and slammed heavily into the old monk's chest. The old monk's entire body was violently flung backward. Lin Jingyu, at his side, slipped and fell to the ground. A series of sorrowful groans followed, as if his bones had all been broken. In a flash, the old monk's withered body was slammed against the temple wall. With a boom, dust billowed, and the entire wall collapsed. "Ha ha 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 ha." The person in the black mass burst into frantic, utterly triumphant laughter. The old monk slowly stood up, a metallic taste in his throat. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of hot blood, staining the front of his robes black. His eyes were spinning, his body was in agony, and the tingling sensation was rapidly spreading toward his heart. He struggled to steady his mind, glanced at Lin Jingyu still unconscious on the ground, and then saw a colorful centipede slowly crawl out from the child's chest pocket. It was as large as a hand, and most strangely, its tail end spread out into 7 tassels, looking like 7 distinct tails. Each tail was a different, vibrant color, beautiful but laced with a hint of terror. "7-tailed centipede, Ret Bei Dui." The old monk cried out, sounding like a painful moan. The black energy on his face intensified, and fresh blood continuously seeped from the corner of his mouth. It seemed he could no longer hold on, yet he forced himself not to fall. He looked up at the black mass in the sky and said, "You implanted this rarest of poisons into the boy, deliberately concealing your true strength, waiting for the opportunity to wound me. You were targeting me, weren't you?" The person in the black mass laughed coldly, "Haha. That's right, I was targeting you, Puji, Fo Tri, the bald donkey. If not for this, it wouldn't be easy to deal with your formidable Buddhist cultivation from the Tian'an temple. All right, quickly hand over the blood-devouring pearl, Fi Huyet Chao, and I will give you the antidote for the 7-tailed centipede and spare your life." Puji gave a mournful laugh and replied, "What a waste of the character Ji, wisdom, in my name. I never expected you to cultivate the evil blood banner of poison and harbor designs on the blood-devouring pearl." He then spoke with a resolute face, "Asking me to give the most inauspicious artifact in the world to you? Don't even dream of it." The person in the black mass became enraged, "Then go meet your Buddha." A flash of red light appeared, the blood banner of poison swelled with the wind, the ghostly wails intensified, and the gigantic demon reappeared. It circled slightly in the air and charged at Puji once more. Puji roared. His robes billowed without wind, and his normally small, thin body seemed to grow significantly. Puji flipped his hand, gripping the dark purple rosary bead tightly. His hands formed the mudra of the water vase. His eyes were wide, and his entire body radiated a hidden golden light. He chanted the syllables one by one, Om, Ma, and I, Pad, Me, Hum. The 6-syllable great bright mantra. The person in the black mass immediately looked much more serious. As Puji finished the syllable hum, the entire jasper rosary instantly shone with brilliant light. At the same time, the evildoer's demon had already reached him. The bloody stench rushed toward him, but upon touching the faint azure light of the jasper, it immediately dissolved into nothingness, unable to advance further, hovering instead in mid-air. Nevertheless, Puji's body convulsed. The 7-tailed centipede was the ultimate poison in the world. Even with his hundreds of years of cultivation, it was difficult to resist. Yet, a trace of a smile, mixed with slight trembling, appeared on his face, which was increasingly shrouded by the black poison gas. Roar! Puji bellowed like a lion's roar. The sound shook the surroundings. The jasper rosary on his chest, empowered by Buddhist strength, glowed even more brightly. Suddenly, one of the beads burst with a crack, transforming into a single, massive character for Buddha that struck the demon's face. Aie. Ah! The demon shrieked miserably and retreated several steps. The red light around its body instantly dimmed, clearly wounded. The person in the black mass shouted furiously, "Well done, old bald rogue." Just as he prepared to attack, the situation changed too quickly. In that instant, 7 or 8 beads transformed into Buddhist truth mantras that hit the demon. The demon screamed continuously, desperately dodging, showing great fear. When the 9th jasper bead struck it, it let out a long wail. Its 5 eyes burst simultaneously, its bones clattered, and with a crash, it fell to the ground, writhed for a moment, then stiffened, slowly dissolving into a pool of terribly putrid blood. At the same time, Puji gasped and spat out another large mouthful of blood, which was now a dark, blackish color. Ah! A sharp cry echoed from the temple door, right in the midst of the intense standoff between the two great masters. Puji and the person in the black mass were both startled. The black air in the sky shuddered. Puji looked toward the temple door and saw, in the faint light outside, the small boy Zhang Xiaofan, who had somehow arrived, standing at the entrance, his mouth agape, watching the bizarre scene inside the temple. The person in the black mask coldly humphed. Without any visible movement from him, the 7-tailed centipede still crawling on Lin Jingyu suddenly flicked its tail and, with a flash, flew into the black mass, disappearing without a trace. The person in the black mask gloomily said, "Humph, you are truly worthy of being one of the 4 great monks of the Tian'an Temple. Though severely wounded, you managed to break my blood-poison corpse king, Dak Huyet Tivang. But you have been struck by the corpse king and poisoned by the 7-tailed centipede. How much longer can you last? You had better obediently hand over the blood-devouring pearl to me." Puji gave a tragic laugh. Black blood began to seep from the corners of his eyes. He hoarsely said, "This old monk may die here today, but I must eliminate you, the evil fiend, first." As soon as he spoke, all the remaining jasper beads in front of him glowed brightly. The person in the black mass immediately grew wary. Suddenly, the latter roared. A flash of azure light shot into the black mass from behind. It was the very jasper bead that had earlier struck the 7-tailed centipede. Having flown a distance, it was secretly manipulated by Puji to circle around the black mass and launch a surprise attack. A furious roar was heard within the black mass. Clearly, the person was caught off guard. Several crashing sounds followed, the azure light flashed, and the black mass dispersed, finally dissolving into the surroundings and vanishing. A tall, thin figure slowly descended from the sky. He was tightly wrapped from head to toe in a black robe, obscuring his age and features. Only his 2 eyes, glaring with fierce malice, were visible. A long sword was sheathed on his back. Puji quietly asked, "With your level of cultivation, Your Excellency, why do you dare not show your face?" The black-robed man blinked his fiercely glaring eyes and sinisterly said, "Bald rogue, today I will ensure you die without a burial place." With that, he flipped his hand and swiftly drew the long sword from his back. The sword was clear as autumn water, bright but not glaring, trailing a faint blue light. "Good sword!" Puji couldn't help but exclaim. The black-robed man gave a faint sneer. He gripped the sword with a secret technique and trod the steps of the Big Dipper constellation, taking 7 consecutive steps. His long sword pointed toward the sky. He muttered a chant, 9 heavens black killing, transform into divine thunder. Majestic heavenly power, guided by the sword. In an instant, the black clouds in the sky suddenly rolled incessantly. Thunder rumbled, and the edges of the dark clouds flashed fiercely. A chilling murderous aura filled the world, and a fierce wind erupted. The divine sword imperial lightning true art, then Kim Go Loi Chong quiet. Puji's face turned ashen at that moment, mixed with astonishment, a hint of despair, and an inexplicable feverish excitement. He suddenly roared, "You are a disciple of the Qingyun Sect." To Zhang Xiaofan, the clouds in the sky, whether white or black, had never descended so close to the ground as the black mass tonight. No thunder had ever rattled his eardrums like this, and no lightning had ever been so blinding, making it almost impossible to look directly at it. It felt as if the sky was about to collapse. He stood there stunned, watching the black-robed man and the old monk in the grass temple glaring at each other, fiercely battling. Suddenly, a clap of thunder exploded, and amidst the ringing in his ears, he saw a dazzling streak of lightning slash across the sky and plunge toward the ground, landing on the black-robed man's long sword. In an instant, the black-robed man's clothes billowed, and his eyes bulged as if about to explode. At that moment, under the blinding flash of lightning, the grass temple was lit up as bright as day. The lightning flashed intensely on the sword tip in the middle of the night. It was breathtakingly beautiful. Zhang Xiaofan barely dared to breathe. In Puji's eyes, that strange feverish excitement reappeared. This is indeed the great power and strength of Taoist true arts. The black-robed man shouted, guiding the sword with his left hand, and forcefully flicked his wrist with all his strength. Thunder boomed, and the lightning on the sword shot toward Puji. Along its path, trees, grass, and stones were instantly vaporized, leaving a deep, scorched mark on the ground. Puji retreated 3 steps, forming an incantation seal. He clasped his hands together, his face solemn, his whole body subtly radiating golden light. He softly chanted, "The Buddha is merciful." With a pop, the 7 remaining jasper beads before him shattered, transforming into a giant Buddha character 3 feet in front of him. The golden light was dazzling, impossible to look at directly. A moment later, the lightning bolt and the Buddha character collided. Zhang Xiaofan suddenly felt a surging turmoil in his internal organs. It was as if all the blood in his body reversed its flow. His limbs went weak, and he could no longer breathe. Then, in an instant, he felt the wind die down, the thunder cease, and the entire world fell silent. Immediately after, he was involuntarily thrown backward. He didn't even have time to feel afraid, only seeing white and gold light, blindingly bright, far brighter than the sun. The entire grass temple disintegrated and was scattered in all directions, blasted into the sky by the clash of the 2 masters. His heart felt hollow, only hearing the fierce wind constantly whistling past his ears. He was terrified, instinctively wanting to curl up, but he was powerless and had to let his body drift toward an unknown place. In his mind, only one thought arose, "Am I going to die?" A sudden, overwhelming terror seized his mind. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat, and he trembled slightly. Death was imminent. How to cope? He passed out, losing consciousness. Puji retreated 3 steps, forming an incantation seal. He clasped his hands together, his face solemn, his whole body subtly radiating golden light. He softly chanted, "The Buddha is merciful." With a pop, the 7 remaining jasper beads before him shattered, transforming into a giant Buddha character 3 feet in front of him. The golden light was dazzling, impossible to look at directly. A moment later, the lightning bolt and the Buddha character collided. Zhang Xiaofan suddenly felt a surging turmoil in his internal organs. It was as if all the blood in his body reversed its flow. His limbs went weak, and he could no longer breathe. Then, in an instant, he felt the wind die down, the thunder cease, and the entire world fell silent. Immediately after, he was involuntarily thrown backward. He didn't even have time to feel afraid, only seeing white and gold light, blindingly bright, far brighter than the sun. The entire grass temple disintegrated and was scattered in all directions, blasted into the sky by the clash of the two masters. His heart felt hollow, only hearing the fierce wind constantly whistling past his ears. He was terrified, instinctively wanting to curl up, but he was powerless and had to let his body drift toward an unknown place. In his mind, only one thought arose: am I going to die? A sudden, overwhelming terror seized his mind. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat, and he trembled slightly. Death was imminent. How to cope? He passed out, losing consciousness. Puji slowly approached, limping, with Zhang Xiaofan and Lin Jingyu tucked under his arms. He found a relatively dry spot of ground and gently placed the two children down. Immediately, he felt severe pain racking his body, as if he were about to shatter. Unable to hold on any longer, he collapsed onto the ground. He looked down. Through the scorched layers of his monk robes, he could vaguely see a stream of black chi slowly enveloping his chest, leaving only a small area near his sternum still untouched. He smiled bitterly, reaching into his pocket. His hand trembled severely. It took him a while to slowly pull out a small, red medicinal pill, no larger than a fingertip, seemingly ordinary. Puji sighed, whispering, "I never thought the ghost physician spoke truly. I ultimately have to use his 3-day must-die pill, tam not tat tu hone." He hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded slightly and swallowed the pill. Done, he raised his head, looking toward the distant mountain range. The rain finally began to fall lightly. The Qingyun Mountains stood tall in the storm, hazy and mysterious. Taoist magic arts are truly mystical, capable of summoning divine thunder. To verify and complement them with my Buddhist arts, one could certainly break through the mystery of eternal life. Alas, though true man Dao Xian has cultivated longer than me, he, just like my 3 senior and junior brothers, cannot abandon sectarian prejudice, nor discard his status and position. Sigh. Puji sighed, withdrawing his gaze, which then rested on the two children. The rain grew heavier, soaking his face. The grass temple had been utterly destroyed in the battle, and there was no nearby place to shelter from the wind and rain. Suddenly, his heart clenched, and he felt worried for the children. He had just exerted his profound Jinyuan and employed the supreme Great Brahma Prajna technique, borrowing the power of the Buddhist supreme treasure, the jadeite prayer beads, Phi Tui Nim Chao, to unleash a great demon-slaying force. This allowed him to counteract the unparalleled might of the evildoer's divine sword Imperial Lightning True Art and counterattack, injuring him and forcing him to flee in terror. However, his body was severely wounded, attacked by a foreign Taoist art, and he was like a lamp with its oil nearly spent. Even his last glimmer of hope for life was gone. It seemed he was only relying on the ghost physician's exotic 3-day must-die pill to prolong his breath, extending his life for only 3 more days. Although the evil fiend is heavily injured, the injury is not to his root foundation. After I pass, he will definitely return to kill witnesses and destroy evidence. At that time, not only these 2 children, but the lives of every household in the village will be in danger. What should I do? Puji was deeply distraught. His cultivation was extremely high, but first, the knowledge of his impending death made him slightly flustered. Second, he worried about the lives of the innocent commoners. The evildoer appeared to be a person of extremely high status within the Qingyun Sect. If he rashly went up the mountain to seek help, it would likely cause more harm than good. But what caused him the most regret was one unfinished task, the great aspiration of his life. As one of the 4 great monks of the Tian'an Temple, he was revered by the world to the extreme. But for him, the most important thing was to unravel the mystery of life and death and find eternal life. However, 50 years ago, he realized that no matter how diligently he practiced the Buddhist arts, he could only increase his power, not solve the mystery of longevity. He pondered desperately. Decades later, he finally devised an unprecedented solution. The 3 paths of the world, Buddhist, Taoist, and demonic, were all flourishing today, and their magic was profound. The demonic path carried a bad reputation with extremely cruel techniques, which no one wanted to touch. But the subtle and profound arts of the Taoist path, each with its unique advantages compared to the Buddhist path, could, if studied together, surely resolve this dilemma. But he never imagined that his 3 senior brothers, who had always been open-minded, would unanimously object, deeming his idea utterly absurd and endlessly counseling against it. Unwilling to concede, he visited various famous Taoist sects multiple times, ascending the Qingyun mountain countless times alone, but was always subtly refused by the sect leader of Qingyun, true man Dao Xian. Thinking of this, he gave a bitter, self-deprecating smile. I only have 3 days left to live, and yet I still worry about eternal life. Am I not just tormenting myself? Although he was resigned, he couldn't bear to look at the 2 children lying on the ground. Unable to think of a complete solution immediately, he looked left and right. Seeing a distant pine tree that might offer some shelter from the wind and rain, better than nothing, he forced himself to rally his spirit. He embraced the 2 children and exerted his strength to walk toward it. After great difficulty, he reached the base of the tree. Gently setting the 2 children down, Puji was utterly exhausted. He sat down on the ground, leaning against the trunk, panting heavily. Heaven and earth are ruthless, treating the myriad things as straw dogs. This famous Taoist quote slowly escaped Puji's lips, containing a trace of bitterness and resentment. The sky was pitch black, casting a pall over the earth. The vast black clouds pressed down heavily. The rain was now pouring, thick and fast. The cold wind whipped violently against his face, bone-chillingly cold. He looked up at the sky. After a long while, he slowly lowered his gaze, looking at the 2 children before him, and whispered, 2 little benefactors, this old monk intended to save you, but alas, I was willing but powerless. This situation was caused by me, bringing disaster upon you too, it is truly a sin. Sigh. If you too were disciples of Qingyun, safe on that mountain among so many others, you would be safe, but now. Suddenly, Puji's whole body shook. He muttered, Qingyun disciple, Qingyun disciple. His mind abruptly shifted, as if he had grasped or thought of something, but then it slipped away again. In that moment, he broke out in a cold sweat. A moment later, an inexplicable, strange feverish excitement flashed in his eyes once more. He looked up and burst into loud laughter, a hint of madness hidden within the sound. Wonderful. Simply marvelous. Though my life is nearing its end, if I pass on the profound Buddhist art to one person, and then let him join the Qingyun sect to cultivate their Taoist arts, wouldn't that solve 2 problems at once? This way, I can save the 2 of them and fulfill my greatest wish. The Buddhist and Taoist families have been estranged for too long, never interacting even unto death. The Qingyun sect would never suspect that a young boy, who grew up at the foot of their mountain, could possess the great Buddhist Dharma. As long as someone combines the learning of both houses, they will surely resolve the conundrum of eternal life that has persisted for 10,000 years. Haha, if so, what regret could I possibly have in dying? His mind was made up, and he felt incredibly uplifted. His cheeks were flushed, and his eyes flashed with bloodshot excitement. He instinctively looked at Lin Jingyu and reached out his hand. But his hand stopped halfway. He hesitated in his heart, this matter is of great consequence. Today's sects have very rigid views and are extremely wary of secretly learning forbidden techniques. Should he be discovered, the consequences would be fatal. This boy, Lin Jingyu, has excellent talent. If accepted by the Qingyun sect, he will certainly attract the attention of his masters. Being young, he might not be able to keep such a monstrous secret. Thinking this, a realization suddenly struck him, and his gaze shifted to Zhang Xiaofan. Recalling the boy's stubbornness earlier in the day, refusing to bow his head even on the verge of death, he nodded and said, a slightly poorer talent is fine, from now on, you must rely on your own fortune. With that, he did not delay any longer. He reached out and lightly tapped Zhang Xiaofan's body a few times, using his remaining strength to wake him up. Zhang Xiaofan slowly regained consciousness. His eyes were blurry, and his ears were still ringing. After a moment, everything returned to normal. As he clearly saw the sight before him, he suddenly jumped in fright, his mouth agape. Sitting before him was the old monk, covered in wounds. His left side appeared to be scorched, looking dry and ugly. A black chi was rapidly spreading on his face, giving his entire countenance a deathly pallor. Yet, for some reason, he looked extremely spirited and radiant. Zhang Xiaofan also saw his friend Lin Jingyu lying unconscious beside him. What are you doing? Zhang Xiaofan was dazed for a long time before hesitantly asking. Puji did not answer. He scrutinized the boy and asked in return, little benefactor, with such heavy wind and rain, why did a child like you come alone to this desolate place? Zhang Xiaofan trembled and replied, I saw you still standing in the temple tonight, and then I saw it was about to rain and this place was so dilapidated. I thought you must be cold, so I brought you some food. Puji's mouth twitched. He pressed his palms together and replied, goodness, goodness. All things are predestined, fate was set long ago. The Buddha is merciful. Zhang Xiaofan asked curiously, what did you say? Puji smiled and replied, this old monk said that you and I have a bond of destiny. Since that is the case, I have a method of cultivation. Would you like to learn it? Zhang Xiaofan replied, what is a method? Puji was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. He rubbed his withered palm over his bald head and said, it's nothing complicated, just a technique for breathing and absorbing energy. If you learn it, you must promise me a few things, all right? Zhang Xiaofan seemed utterly bewildered, yet he still replied, tell me. Puji said, you must never tell anyone around you about this, even your closest relatives. Can you do that? Zhang Xiaofan nodded and replied, I understand. I won't speak of it even if I die. Puji was startled. He saw that despite the boy's young age, his face was full of determination. The rain outside, thick as threads, felt like knives, like mist, lashing against his small, somewhat haggard face. Puji suddenly took a deep breath, lowered his eyes, and continued, furthermore, you must practice this method once every day, but you cannot practice it in front of others. You can only do so late at night when no one is around. The last thing, unless you are facing a life or death crisis, you absolutely must not use this technique, or great disaster will surely follow. He paused, then opened his eyes wide, staring intensely at Zhang Xiaofan, and asked, can you do it? Zhang Xiaofan pondered for a moment, tilted his head, and then scratched his head, his face full of doubt. But in the end, he nodded vigorously. Puji smiled faintly and said no more, beginning to transmit the verbal incantation to him. The incantation was not long, only about 1,000 characters, but it was difficult and obscure. Zhang Xiaofan tried his best, and it took him 3 hours to memorize it all. Puji waited until he had thoroughly memorized everything, then breathed a sigh of relief, his spirit utterly exhausted. He looked at Zhang Xiaofan, his eyes filled with kindness, and said, this old monk has cultivated all his life and never intended to accept a disciple. I never expected that on the brink of death, I would share the fate of master and disciple with you. It seems you should know my name. He paused, then continued, my Dharma name is Puji, a monk of the Tianyin Temple. Cough. Child, do you know the Tianyin Temple? Zhang Xiaofan thought for a moment, then shook his head. Puji chuckled, just a child. Then, as if remembering something, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the dark purple bead. He looked at it intently, then handed it to Xiaofan and instructed, keep this bead carefully. Do not let outsiders see it. When things settle down later, find a deep cave or cliff and throw it away. Also, you must never mention my name to outsiders. Zhang Xiaofan received the bead and replied, I understand. Puji stroked his head and said, you and I have this fated connection, I don't know if we will meet again in the next life. Child, please kneel and kowtow 3 times, and call me master. Zhang Xiaofan looked at Puji, seeing that the smile had faded and his face was solemn. He nodded, said master, and knelt on the ground, kowtowing 3 times in succession. He had just finished kowtowing and had not yet looked up when he heard Puji laughing softly, a laugh containing both sorrow and determination. Zhang Xiaofan intended to look up at him, but suddenly felt a light tap on his back and his eyes went dark. He tumbled over, losing consciousness once more.